Welcome to SQL Friday, episode 2 with Kevin Chant and Sander Stad, presenting Azure Devops Duet. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced in English, because that's not my first language, but they will tell me if I'm saying it incorrectly. You will find the video of this meeting. It's being recorded. You will find it online on sqlfriday.net. It's actually on YouTube, but the easiest way to find it is on sqlfriday.net, and then you just click the past sessions button. If you want to speak on SQL Friday, then go to sqlfriday.net, click the call for speakers button, and send your abstract in, and I'm happy to have you. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much, Sander and Kevin Chant, for coming to SQL Friday. I'm going to stop sharing and hand over to you. Just one thing. At the bottom, if you see your names or if you have your video on, it will be on there. I'm going to put a banner on top of it, so don't worry about being kind of shown on YouTube. You won't be a YouTuber just because of this. Only Sander and Kevin will. Thanks.
Hey, let's get started. Right.
Thank you very much. So, first of all, I did the typical Teams question. Can everybody hear me okay? Can you just put your hands up or somebody put in a conversation? That's all good. Thank you very much for that. So, yeah, welcome to today's session, Azure Devops Duet, which is a tale about a development team and an operations team that have to bond together and start using Azure DevOps for SQL Server deployments.
So for the next 60 minutes, we'll be talking about Azure DevOps, which allows you to do the full application management lifecycle. So from creating a work item way through its release. We'll be discussing DevOps, cloud, and on-premise. Talk about source control, boards, pipelines, artifacts, and of course, test plans. At the end of this session, you'll have a basic understanding of the main features of Azure DevOps and how it can be used with SQL Server. So let's continue.
So in this session, one of us is from the SQL development team and the other is from the SQL operations team. Our manager has decided that both teams will merge together into one DevOps team. So we're all one big happy family.
Well, in reality, this is going to be a really gradual process. This cannot be done in 60 minutes. But because we only have 60 minutes, we've taken it upon ourselves to get that, actually show you that. So in addition, our manager has decided that the development team lead will become the Scrum Master and the Ops team lead will be the Product Owner.
Now, for those of you who don't know, the Product Owner is responsible for translating the business needs into workable backlog items for Scrum sprints, which means they have to speak to stakeholders at various levels within the business. In addition, they're ultimately responsible for the priority of the items that the teams work through on their backlog boards, even though they discuss the priorities with the stakeholders.
And a Scrum Master's role is to empower the team to do the backlog items by encouraging how they work and removing any impediments if they occur.
Can I interrupt with one thing? Sander, could you try just moving a little bit closer to the mic or move the mic closer to you? Because it's still breaking up a little bit now and then.
Okay. Is this better?
Yeah, it works. We'll see how it works because it's coming back and forth. So.
Okay. So let's go into the introductions. I am Sander. I'm a SQL Server DBA from the Netherlands. I work for Waypoint ANALYTICAL, who do large-scale water, soil, and plant sampling in the United States. I'm a cloud and data center MVP and a major contributor to the DBA Tools project. You can follow me on Twitter. I have a blog. You can try to write as much as you can, but A lot of projects are in the way of that. If you have any questions after the session, you can send me an email. All the demos that are going to be shown with scripting and everything are going to be on my GitHub page under the presentations under the name of this session. So you can use those demos, reteach them, use them, change them, whatever you want to do. It's all up to you. And this is going to be Kevin. Slightly larger, complicated.
It's not that complicated, surely. So yeah, basically my name is Kevin Chant. I'm a senior database architect living in the Netherlands. However, as some of you can probably tell from the accent, I'm originally from the southwest of the UK. However, I live in the Netherlands due to the fact my wife is Dutch. So basically, I'm an Englishman, living in the Netherlands, working for a French-based company because he met a woman in Australia. Now, when I say it aloud, I can understand why Sander thinks it's somewhat complicated. Now, I have over 23 years experience working in IT, and over that time I've worked in various sectors, including the banking, oil and health insurance industries. I've worked with all versions of SQL Server in one form or another, as well as other database management systems. And I have various certifications, including both the old and the new style MCSE, and I was probably the last ever person in the world to gain the MCSD Azure Architect certification. Now, just like Sander, you can see I'm on social media as well. I'm on Twitter @KevChant. I'm on LinkedIn, where my username's got a nice user-friendly URL of Kevin-Chant. I also have my own blog, and my email address is available upon request.
Great. So, let's go into Azure DevOps versus the cloud.
Yeah. So, like Sander said, the first thing we have to discuss is whether to use the Azure DevOps Cloud Service or Azure DevOps Server. For those of you who aren't aware of the difference, Azure DevOps Server is basically the new name for TFS, which is the application that you tend to install on premises to do your application lifecycle management. Now it's been rebranded to be Azure DevOps Server, and it's been made to look and feel just like the Azure DevOps Cloud Service that you can use. Personally, I'd like to use Azure DevOps Server so that we can handle its security better on premises. Plus, it means that we'd be able to keep the backend SQL Server databases and report on them, because you're not able to do that with the Azure DevOps Cloud Service. However, the downside if we do that is that we'd have to build one or more servers for business continuity. Plus, we may have to wait a while for new features because of Microsoft's cloud first strategy. In addition to all of that, we'd have to maintain and patch all the servers that we actually end up building.
But if you use the Azure DevOps Service cloud, you don't have to handle all those patches and things. So, and you will have the newest features already installed. So Microsoft takes care of it. It costs some more money than the on-premise one, but you don't have to handle all that. And it's easier to install extensions from the marketplace, by the way.
That's true. And we can still secure the Azure DevOps Cloud Service anyway, because there's a lot of things you can do within it to make it more secure. Besides, we still have to consider security and compliance, whichever one we choose to keep our auditors happy. Luckily, like I said just now, Azure DevOps is fairly well structured and it's easy to manage.
So the main point we want you to take away from this section is if you install SQL DevOps of Azure DevOps Server, you have to patch and maintain those servers. Whereas the cloud service, it's already done and you don't have to take care of all those. You're not taking care of any of the high availability of your servers on premise or anything like that. So it's already taken care of for you. Yeah, that's
I'm on mute. Sorry about that, everybody. Slight technical issue. Hopefully you can all see the screen I'm sharing right now. Just a hands up from somebody would be good.
I think.
Good. So, as you can see here, Azure DevOps has its own hierarchy. At the top, you're represented by the icon here. You have your service, where your account has access to one or more organizations. So I just click on there to go back to your Surface home screen a minute to make it less confusing. So as you can see on the left-hand side here, you can have access to one or more organizations. For example, an organization can be actually the company you work for, or if you're in a large enterprise, it can be a subdivision. Now, as you can see here on the right-hand side, each organization can have one or more projects. And each project can contain one or more teams, which I will show you shortly in the project settings. Now, if we click on one of the projects here, for example, you'll see all the features that Sander mentioned earlier we'll be covering today on the left-hand side here. Plus, if you have the right permissions, you can change things at the project or organization level. So, for example, here, if I click on project settings, you can see there's a whole host of things that I can change here. As I said a couple of minutes ago, you can create your teams here. And within your teams, you can decide who's a member of those teams. In addition to that, you can make it a bit more fine-grained as far as your permissions are concerned. In addition to this, in project settings, you can do other things as well, like I just mentioned earlier. For example, you can create service connections to connect to other applications. So you can fire off actions from within Azure DevOps to certain other applications when you do things. In addition to that, you can also create parallel jobs as well. And what I mean by that is that you can have multiple things run at the same time.
Nice. So remember, there's other things we can configure as well. For example, we can set our boards to use Scrum, which we're going to need later on in the session. And the main point we want you to take away from this is how Azure DevOps is structured. It's really easy to follow where everything is. So that is the main admin stuff. Let's go to the next part, which is important. Like this screen again. Go.
I think the slide's over to you now.
Yep. So that was the main admin stuff. Let's talk about version control, which is one of the options that is in Azure, which is the Azure repos in Azure DevOps.
You mean like source safe?
No source safe. Maybe something a little bit more modern. I actually used Visual Source Safe in the past, and people liked it at that point, but I never liked it. And there's a reason why Microsoft stopped supporting it. So we're going to use something called Git. And if you don't know Git by now, probably look into it, because Microsoft has bought GitHub, and as all their tools are actually set to use it. So.
But that'll only be for development work though, right? Because it sounds like version control would be quite complicated for the ops guys to learn.
Well, actually, it's not that complicated. And if you use it with ops, at my current company, we are transitioning to use it for multiple reasons, also for the operations. All our scripting is going to be in source control. We're going to use Kubernetes, which is going to configuration files going to be in our Git server, which makes it easy to follow who actually made the changes. So it is important throughout the entire IT department.
Well, I'm always game for performing better, so tell me a bit more about it.
So, well, like I said, Azure DevOps supports various version control systems, including Git, like TFVS is also supported, but not the standard. Git is actually the standard in Azure DevOps. And because the Git is a distributed system compared to TFVS, which is a central source control.
Okay. So what about branching strategies? Because I hear they're pretty important.
Yeah. So, well, there's various ways we can use that. And if you look on the internet, there are a couple of flows that you can use. There's the Git flow and the GitHub flow.
Oh, what's the difference between those two? Because they sound pretty similar to me.
They are pretty similar. The major difference between the two is that the Git flow, with the Git flow, we don't directly merge into master unless it's a hotfix. With the GitHub workflow, there's not a development branch. There's only feature branches. So as soon as there is a feature which is successfully tested, it will be merged right into the master branch. And with Git flow, you also have to merge into development and then go to master. And us devs have been using source control for many years. So if we do things like pair programming, differences between dev and ops. They can
Peer programming.
Yeah, so they can get used to it with pair programming.
Not peer programming.
No, not peer programming. It's going to be pair programming. That's going to be a little bit difficult with the social distancing nowadays, but pair programming will be literally someone sitting next to you. So, where you would write the code together. And it sounds strange, but research has shown it's actually takes a bit longer to do. However, it produces better code. And people learn coding a lot faster and get those little tweaks that seniors have. They get acquainted to it and they can improve their own programming a little better.
Okay, but wouldn't that mean there's going to be a lot of overhead in both of that practice?
Yeah, you would think, right? So there's two people writing the same code, but research has shown there's only like 15% overhead involved with it. And that overhead is largely compensated with the increased quality of the code, which means less bug fixes that you have to do in the end. Of course, there's other methods you can use, like code reviews, and at the end of the day, we can experiment, see what works best.
Okay. So what's to stop somebody coding their own release and pushing it straight into the master branch?
I'm glad you asked. So we're going to use Azure Devops, and Azure Devops has branching policies you can use. One of which is that two people have to approve the updates to the master branch.
Well, that sounds good. I think we've got to do that anyway to be SOX compliant, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
On that note, maybe I'll have a look now and we can all go through it and see if there's a way to do it.
Yeah.
So, hopefully you're all seeing the right screen at the moment. Apparently not. Do apologise. Slight technical issue there. That's better. So, if you go here, for example, into one of your repositories and then click on the branches, what Sander is talking about, if you click on the ellipsis on the right hand side and go to branch policies, you'll see here there's some settings that you can change and make your branches more secure. Now, for example, for SOX, you need to do the forward review principle. So you'd have to set here the minimum number of reviewers to be 2. And whether or not you allow the requester to approve your own changes is up to you, but most companies adopt that practice. And in addition
So
to that,
for a question there, it's from me actually. When you say SOX, you mean the Sarbanes-Horrible-Oxley Act, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so it's American legislation, just if anyone works in a non-American company. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. But yeah, you have to still stick to the standards if you work for certain financial institutions, even over here in Europe. So to carry on from there, yeah. And in addition to that as well, you would have to add automatic reviewers at the bottom. So if you went to do a update to a branch, then somebody else would have to review it as well, and they would get notified via email, for example. So that's me done there. So back to Sander. That was just a quick demonstration on the duet.
Gonna share again. So the main thing we want you to take away from this part is that it's about Azure repos. So there's going to be various methods that you can use. However, Git kind of de facto standard nowadays. I cannot imagine anybody using anything else than Git. Use Microsoft technologies, maybe some people use SVN, those kind of things. But Git is growing in popularity for a reason. So make sure you secure your updates using branching policies, like you see FN. And Git also really hooks into all the Microsoft products with development, like Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, Azure Data Studio. They all fully support Git. Start using it.
So you better discuss Azure Boards, since I'm going to be using it to organize our backlog items. Now, Azure Boards can use basic, Scrum, Agile, or CMMI templates for each team that you want to create in Azure DevOps. So you can deal with different types of the Agile framework, for example. Now, does anybody who's currently in this session actually use CMMI? Feel free to put your hands up if you do.
I hear crickets.
Yeah, tumbleweeds floating across the screen, I think. So
we
anyway,
have a request for you, Sander. Could you try, if you switch off your camera, to see if you get more bandwidth for your voice, because it's still breaking up now and then. So,
okay.
Thank you.
I just switched it off.
Do you want to just say something quickly, just to test for everybody? Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Testing. Still going okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a little better. We'll see.
Looks like the mystery could be solved. Okay then. So let's go back to here again after the slight interruption. So because we're using Scrum, we probably want to use the Scrum template. So for now, we'll keep it as standard, but we can customize these templates if we need to. So, for example, here's Azure Boards. If I click here to expand it and we leave, because I don't want to save my changes at this moment in time. You have different views in Azure Boards at the moment. So you have work items where any of your generic work items will go in. And these are the standard items here, by the way, apart from retrospectives, which I'll cover shortly. You also have boards, and that contains a default board view, depending on which process stroke template you use. So because we're using the Scrum template here, for example, if you look at the backlogs, you'll see the backlog items all grouped by priority here. Once you've got your backlog items in place, of course, some of them will be allocated to sprints. So to make your life easier, you can view things on the sprint board. So here you can see it's a very easy way to view which tasks you've got outstanding within the sprint you're currently working on. And then there's queries as well, which I will cover shortly. I think Sander was going to ask me something earlier.
Yeah. So how are we going to do the backlog items organized for Scrum?
Well, obviously, if you have hundreds of backlog items, it's going to look quite messy on your backlog board. However, according to the definition of Scrum, there is actually a hierarchy in place. So first of all, you have your epics, as you can see here. And it's Azure Devops within Azure Boards is really good because this will help you see this visually. Every epic you have in Scrum can have one or more features. So basically, an epic is something that can last usually between a year to 18 months, let's say. A feature will be a short piece of that epic that would take you a few months to work on. And then within each feature, you would have one or more backlog items, which a backlog item is usually an item of work which is small enough to work on within a sprint. And then each backlog item can have one or more tasks for you to work on, which is just a small chunk of the backlog item to do. So I hope that explains everything for you there, Sander.
Yeah, it does. So how do you propose we use the boards? I mean, if you just have all the backlog items in that list, it's going to be pretty cluttered, right?
Well, yeah, like I said earlier, over time, if you end up with hundreds of backlog items, it's going to look very cluttered indeed, which is why you can start adding tags to your backlog items. And then from there, if you click on the funnel, you can start using the filter and filter by whichever tags you happen to put into your backlog items.
Okay, fair enough. But how are we going to know what our sprint goal is, though?
What our sprint goal is, or when the item's ready for sprint?
What our sprint goal is.
Oh, okay. Well, you can add an extension as well to view what your sprint goal is if you go to the marketplace. So, for example, here, if I click on the sprint board at the moment, you'll see there's an option to click on the sprint goal. And from there, you can put in what your goal for the sprint is. Now, just on a side note for everybody that's in this session at the moment, if you're wondering how hard it is to go to the marketplace to look at extensions, you can just click on the shopping bag icon on the top of the screen here and click on Browse Marketplace. And for example, like just now, we used the Sprint Goal extension. If I just type in Goal here in the marketplace, you'll see you can get the Sprint Goal extension from there. And you can just click on it to get it installed.
Okay, cool. I'm guessing we're still going to use our other applications to manage the boards in the meantime, before we look at this.
Well, you can do, you know. It is Microsoft do highly recommend to people that you can actually just keep your existing applications that you use for doing things like managing your boards in use still, whilst you get used to doing things in Azure DevOps, or you can use them both together side by side. Personally, myself, I would suggest if you're looking to use Azure DevOps throughout your business, so I would rip that band-aid off and actually start getting used to working with items in your boards as soon as possible. That way you can get used to all the tightly knit integration that you get available within Azure DevOps for use. So for example, if I open up one of these backlog items here quickly for you, you can see that you can actually add links to your repository items that you create here. So it's all very tightly knit. Now you can do this with some other external applications as well, but you don't get that tight integration there. So essentially, you can think of work items to a degree as being kind of a linchpin for everything you use in Azure DevOps. Anyway, did I mention all the analytics and preview features that we can potentially use with Azure boards?
Kevin, we only have 60 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. I think you'll all just have to watch our session at the next SQL Bits to see us using Azure boards a lot more.
Yeah.
Anyway, the main thing to take away from this section is that Azure boards is a very powerful way of managing Scrum or Agile work visually, especially if you happen to be a product owner like myself at the moment.
So let's continue. So pipelines. This is where we're actually gonna build and deploy our deliverables. Server.
Are you talking, Sander? Because I can't hear you.
You've broken up again?
Apparently. Can you hear me okay?
Can do now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
In fact,
I see some advice from the chat here. To me, it looks like the silence detection for Sander's microphone worked a bit too much. Something like that. Or someone suggested noise cancelling feature. I don't know. I don't think we should troubleshoot too much right now, though.
It will be okay. So let's talk about Azure pipelines, which is where we're going to build our and deploy our deliverables for SQL Server.
Okay, so how will this work for SQL Server deployments?
Well, we could look to deploy using state-based or migration-based deployments.
Okay, and what's the main difference between those two?
So state-based will deploy something entirely for changes, whereas migration-based will start at some point and there will be a script for all the different changes that happened from that point on. So let's say you have version 1.0 and then version 1.1 has a script and version 1.2 has a script. Whereas state-based, you will deploy the entire state without all different scripts, where SSDT figure it out for you. We're going to use state-based because it's easier to start with, and for these demo purposes and our environment, state-based will be good enough. There are a lot of pros and cons for these two different deployment types. If you Google state-based versus migration-based, you can figure out which one suits the company the best. It's fairly easy to build a pipeline for SQL Server updates. I actually have a demo for that. So when I first had to create a lot of these projects, I had to do about 20, 25 databases, and it becomes tedious very fast. So what I did was I used the PS module development PowerShell module to create a template for my SSDT project, and I could put anything in there, and I actually created a solution with multiple projects in there, which is actually on my GitHub page. Show you. So if you go to my GitHub, this is my template. And for my script that I am going to execute, it will download that particular template. It will unpack it, extract it, and then install it. And the most important part is this little piece of code where I am going to create the entire solution. And let's run that little piece. Quote, create SSDT project. What it will do is it's going to download that latest template, install it, and now we have our solution, and it actually opens it for me. Explorer. If I open that, I will go to Visual Studio. And here is my solution with two different projects, one for the data model and one for the tests. And as a little database, I'm going to create a demo database with a couple tables and a couple stored procedures. Create like 10 tables, 50 stored procedures. And then I'm going to import that database. I'm going to select the connection. And I'm going to say the object type and run start. Done. I've created my SSTT project from scratch within a minute. I don't have to go into the entire process of creating new at the project. And I also included the T-SQL T1. And what I did with that was, because I wanted to include basic unit testing, is that I created a PowerShell module called PSTCT Test Generator. Also open source, and on the PowerShell gallery, you can just download from there. And what it will do is it creates some basic unit tests, like test the collation, test if the object in your database is there, does it have the correct parameters, does the data type in the table have the correct precision, all those kind of things. So my little script for that one is this little piece of code that will do everything. So you point it to an instance with a database, and where do you want to output it? And the destination in this case is going to be my solution directory, or my project directory in that solution for the tests. So let's run that little piece. The tests, and it will get that current state as a database, and then create all those objects for you. Just take a couple seconds. So this really leverages your developers to start doing unit testing. And this is really basic. You still have to do the integration testing. Like how does my procedure act? If I do inserts, do I actually get those inserts? All those kind of things. And now we're going to go back to Visual Studio and say, let's add our existing items, a directory, select everything, and do an add. Now I have my entire solution done. I can do unit testing, I can deploy my models, and I already prepared this for you before this session, because we can actually create a pipeline really easy using the template that I created, because it includes an Azure pipelines YAML file, which you create by using the new pipeline. I'm going to select my Azure repos, that one, and I'm going to select an existing YAML file. And it already knows it's already there. So select it, continue, and done. This is all generated. So it's all really taking care of all the stuff. And just so back to the pipelines. And I already ran this one just for the time. What it will do is it will build the entire solution and will publish the artifacts because I need that in another step. Then it's going to test for SQL 2017 and 2019. And within that test, it's going to download the artifacts, use the package, download the SQL Server container. It's going to publish that DAC pack to that container. then run all the tests. And in the end, back to the tests. This is how it looks like. If I had a 100% test percentage for the pass percentage, which is good. So we can do deployments from that point on. So that's a little thing we can do with Azure, with the Azure pipelines using these templates. And just to go into the unit testing, I like unit testing using T-SQL-T. T-SQL-T is an open source unit testing framework for SQL Server. The reason I like T-SQL-T in this case is that it leaves the developer in their own T-SQL bubble. So they don't need to learn another language like C# or PowerShell, Pester, and all those kind of things. They can just write T-SQL. Actually, just SQL Server code, T-SQL code. So, and one good thing with the pipeline activities, we can patch those to work items. In fact, one of the advantages of Azure Devops that it's so integrated, we can link repo updates to work items as well, plus the test cases.
Huh. Okay, well, I've seen that we can either use GUI tasks or YAML for our pipelines. Which one shall we use?
So you saw me use YAML. The GUI is good for exploring stuff if you're not really familiar with DevOps, but I would choose to go with YAML right away. It's actually pretty easy to write the YAML pipelines because if I open it, let's edit this one pipeline. If I go to the marketplace and I want to do anything with that one, let's do a file copy.
Sorry, Sander, I can't hear you again.
So annoying.
We're going to have to put sellotape to your microphone at this rate.
Can you hear me now?
Keep it.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you now.
Yeah.
I think it's if you find a spot where you're heard, don't ever move your head.
I'm not going to move anymore. So I'm just going to select a little piece of script and some arguments. And if I put my cursor somewhere and I say add, it actually generates the entire YAML code for you. So you don't, as long as you know how to move around the marketplace and you know what values to put in, I would just use YAML and build your YAML file from here. I think Microsoft is going away from the GUI in the end because YAML is easier to save. It can be put in your source control and all the changes will be kept and all those kind of things. So I would go for YAML. And of course, we can use the YAML file to do and use PowerShell with your YAML to handle the deployments if you have a lot of servers. You can just execute those.
How do we know if that worked?
Well, we could use simply use get PowerShell to output the XML as a JUnit format. So actually, I run this. If I look at my code, I'm exporting the results in a JUnit format already. So all these test results, everything you see from this run, these tests are imported using a JUnit XML format, which can be interpreted by Azure Devops. So, and of course, we can put other feedback mechanisms in place for deployments as well.
We can do that?
Yep.
Ah, awesome. Okay, so if we go to edit a pipeline, are we limited to those tasks that we've seen, like you showed us just now on your screen?
No, you can use way more. So like I said, there are, if I go back to my pipeline, edit, there's a whole bunch of stuff all from the marketplace that we can install. And they're still being developed up to this day. So you're not just limited to that amount of settings we have right now. But yeah, I would ask the Azure DevOps admin before installing anything for security, because these are not only built by Microsoft, they're also from the community. So I would ask permission before you install anything for the entire enterprise.
Oh yeah, because I think somebody mentioned earlier that sometimes when you go and install the extension, you have to request permission from whoever owns the organization. To be honest, I didn't realize that was a thing.
Yeah, but it does mean we can get help with those security and compliance issues we talked about earlier.
No, good.
So let's go back. Session. Come on.
So Sander's loading up the slides quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, Sander, I've seen that we can use Microsoft hosted agents within our own network on premises, which are services that Microsoft effectively hosts and runs in Azure to do a lot of the processing of the build and release tasks, like building various artifacts and deploying them. However, it would appear that because of our infrastructure, we would have to solve a lot of issues internally. For example, we'd have to raise a lot of firewall port opening requests. So maybe we're better off building our own Azure DevOps agents internally within our own infrastructure.
Yeah, maybe. But remember, a lot of us are developers and we don't want to build our own servers. So we'd have to figure out exactly what software we need installed on those agents and maintain them. Oh, what? Yep. So, like Kevin showed.
Yeah. So basically, as I'm showing here, Microsoft actually provides guides on how you can build and deploy your own hosted agents on site. It used to be, as you can see here, it was formerly just for Azure DevOps agents. However, it has now been, the repository is now being changed to be virtual environments. And that's to reflect the fact that Microsoft actually now has a standard build that you can use for not just Azure DevOps agents, but also for GitHub Actions as well, as you can see here. And if I click on here and you do a bit of exploring, you can actually see a list, a very big list of all the applications that you can actually get up and running if you use these contained images that you can get from Microsoft and install on premises. As you can see here, you can actually install Visual Studio in 2019 Enterprise as part of these images. And I'm guessing some of you are probably thinking right now, well, hang on, don't we need to be licensed to be able to install Visual Studio on X amount of Azure DevOps agents? And you are technically right to a degree. And if you look at your Visual Studio licensing guide that's available online, you'll actually see here quite clearly that if one or more of your team has an active Visual Studio Enterprise subscription, then you're more than welcome to use these images and use the Visual Studio that's on these images as part of your tasks. I know that is a burning question for a lot of people these days.
Well, if we're going to do that, we might as well run the agent through a command line instead of using a service, right?
How come?
Well, everybody knows that the command line is going to generate more detailed results.
Okay. Well, I actually tested this earlier for the benefit of quickness for this session, and I actually put it in these set of PowerPoint slides. So.
Behold, there's not much there, just that it succeeded.
No. So you're actually better off just running it as a service if you're going to run the Azure DevOps agent service locally somewhere.
Okay, so let's go to the next part. Let's go to test plans. And of course, we can do test plans once we've done the initial build and release before we release elsewhere.
Don't they have to be automated though? Because that would take a lot of effort to some of the items that people need to test.
Yeah, not necessarily. Your test plans can include manual steps as well. However, our trial has expired, so cannot really demonstrate that. So you would have to imagine.
Yeah, basically, if you want to use test plans within Azure DevOps, you have to pay for a separate kind of license, which is called Basic plus Test Plans. You can have test plans for a 30-day trial, and obviously once that trial is expired, you would have to change your license if you want to keep using it. So we might as well go off to talk about artifacts now.
Yeah. So with artifacts, you can share various things like NuGet packages with other developers or other services. For example, if you create a NuGet package, you can share it within Azure Artifacts for other users to download. And you can actually feed on that.
It was a bit strange because I couldn't test earlier when I went to test using the artifacts for the organization that we got for free with my Visual Studio subscription.
That's because you sometimes have to go through your Visual Studio subscription benefits page to set them up. Okay.
Just on a side note for everybody that's in this session today as well, if you do have a Visual Studio subscription, you are eligible to have your own Azure DevOps organization to test things on. And in addition to that, like we just talked about just now, you can separately activate using artifacts as well for yourself and indeed for others to actually feed off as well at the same time.
And that's pretty important to have your own organization, because you don't want to break your company's organization if you're testing out any things we've just talked about. So don't do this in production.
Okay, well, to be honest, there's a lot of other features I'm looking forward to the team using, like the various dashboards that we can configure. So as you can see here, you can configure various sprint-related widgets that you can show here.
Okay, and don't forget the wiki though.
Ah, that's true. You can create the wiki here using Markdown language. There's also a new analytics views feature, which you can see here, which is in preview. So basically, I can pump Azure DevOps metrics straight into Power BI right now. In addition to that as well, you can actually install other things in the overview section for your extensions. And whilst I'm talking about extensions, I have just remembered there is one which is probably relevant at this moment in time, which has been given kind of a reprieve by Microsoft, you could say. And in fact, I was going to discuss about it earlier. Now, some of you who work with Scrum may know that as part of the Scrum framework, you have to have a retrospective meeting. And because Microsoft recognizes in Azure boards, they actually added an extension you can install called retrospectives, which actually has the look and feel similar to a Kanban board. So for example, if I create one here called SQL Friday, for instance, and save there, if I open it up, you can see here, it's got a very, like I said just now, very similar look and style to the Kanban board that you create. And your team can add additional what went well and what didn't go so well to this before your next retrospective meeting. And then from there, once they've added all the items, they can look to vote on them. And the good thing about items they add here is that you can actually generate backlog items from any issues that come up in your retrospective meetings. Now, the reason it's fairly relevant is because a few weeks back, Microsoft are going to stop supporting it. But as you can see here at the top of the screen, it's been given a bit of a reprieve. So I just really wanted to cover this because it's quite relevant right now.
I do love that news. Yeah,
it is great, fantastic news.
Yes, it is. So where shall we begin? From this point on,
I think right now the best thing that we can do at the moment is get both the teams together to explain to them what we're trying to achieve, because obviously it's going to have to be a team effort.
Okay. So for now, yep. So that's going to be it for today. Are there any questions?
And if you do have any questions, please write them in the chat window and I will try to relay as much as I can.
Magnus will be our moderator for the next 3 minutes, everybody.
Yeah, we've made good time.
If you don't have any questions now, but you come up with questions, then just follow Sander and Kevin on, I don't know, what's your favorite social media? I'm on Twitter mostly, but somewhere he's scrolling back to the presentation slide. SQL Stad.
Oh, and this is one. This is Kevin.
And Kev Chant on Twitter. Perfect.
So, if that's it, everybody, I think. Do you want to say the goodbye, Sander, or shall I?
Yeah, well, so if there are no more questions, I want to thank everybody for attending, and I hope you learned something from this and maybe put it in practice, and seeing how to implement some stuff of it.
Yeah, and obviously enjoy your weekend, everybody, and stay safe.
Stay safe.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys for coming to SQL Friday. Super happy about it. I don't have session evaluations. It's kind of the next step, but I'll evaluate for you. I enjoyed it. I work with Azure Devops. It's really good to have a walkthrough of it. So thank you so much for that. Sander, you need to fix your mic. But apart from that, I loved it.
I think we should sellotape the microphone to his face next time.
Yeah. Duct tape it.
So we have lots of comments in the chat agreeing with me on it being a good session. So thank you. It was really good. Thanks. Thank you. And so on. So people seem to agree that it was an awesome session. I'm going to shut down. But before I do, I have shared, I hope you can all see it, the upcoming schedule for SQL Friday. So just go into sqlfriday.net and check out the upcoming schedule. We have meetups booked for the upcoming 2 weeks, and I will create meetup events for, well, as we come closer to the dates. But just schedule this time every week and you're safe. All right. See you guys. I'm gonna stop recording and shut down the meeting now.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you, Marcus.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.